configuring the Oracle network. Today we'll go over the process of how to configure our Oracle database server to communicate with our application server. The Oracle network service makes sure there's a communication between the database server and the application server. Oracle network files is the software which have the settings that will run anytime the network needs to be started. So you have to configure these files to make sure your application server communicates with your database server. The network configuration files and connection methods. We have three ways we can connect, three configuration files and their connection method. The first one is the Tnsnames.ora, which shows you, or which rather explains the way by which you can communicate with different databases. If you have like 3 databases and you want to connect to the 3 databases, you have to configure your Tnsnames.ora file, and you need the Oracle. It has to be configured using the Oracle seed, the host name, the service name, which is the same thing as your global database name, and a connection pool. The second one is the sqlnet.ora file, which shows you the different naming methods by which you can connect the application server to your database server. And we have the listener.ora files. We make the listener.ora files is important because that's a file that anytime there's a request from a client to connect to a server, before you start the server process, the listener has to make that connection between the client request and the database to create a server process. So the listener.ora file is important for that. So the CNS name shows the mapping of all databases you can connect to. So on the TNS.ora file, it shows you the connection of all the different databases you can connect to once they're configured on that file. The SQL provides the ways you can connect to the database, that is the different naming method. If you want to use the local naming method, the easy connect. And the listener.ora file stores information so that listener can accept incoming connections, just as I explained the other time. The default location of your network files, you have to know that, and that's when you cd it to oracle_home/the network, your admin, and you do an ls, you see that that's the default location of your network files. Before you can configure the network files, you have to modify your bash profile and export the TNS_admin, which will make it easy for you to go to your default location of your network files. And I have there the path to the network file, which is your Oracle app, home app, Oracle product 12.201, DB1 network admin. Also, when you modify your bash profile, don't forget we have to source the bash profile. The default tool to configure the network files are the network configuration assistance utility, the NETCA, and the NETMGR utility, the NETMGR. We're going to use the tool to configure our network files. And the last thing is this setup makes it possible for database to connect dynamically, and we're going to go through that process too. Let's go to the default location for our network files. CD $sign Oracle home. Here we have a listener.ora file, our sqlnet.ora, and our tns.ora file. So let's make a copy of each. And a new one will make this book 03. TNS names. sqlnet.ora. Let's do analyze. Now we make 3 copies of each file. I mean 3 copies. That is for the listener, the sqlnet.ora, the TNS, and the listener.ora file. Now let's set it to our home. Let's go modify our bash profile. So vi. Now we have to modify this. Let's export the path for our TNS. Export of TNS underscore admin. We give it a full path, which is home /r oracle /product db1, which is name of our database. I mean the first database, the network /admin. Now let's save this. Let's source our bash profile. So let's cd to be sure we have. Now we have it there. Let's ls. Now we're able to modify our bash profile and create copies of the 3 configuration files: the listener, sqlnet, and the TNS name files. Use the NETCA, the net manager, to set up our network configuration files. NETCA, it's gonna come up. I'm using the head card because it's a GUI tool. We see choose configuration you would like to do. We'll do the listener configuration. Click on next. Wanna add, click on next. And the listener name will be your database name, which is bold. Click on next. For these, we use the default, which is the TCP. Click on next. We use the standard port number 1521. Says another port number uses this. Would you like to continue? Yes. Would you like to configure another listener? No. Says next, and we click finish. Now let's use the NETCA to configure. Now let's use the net manager to configure the same listener. So we'll do NETMGR click on this, go to our listener. You can see we have both there, and you see we have 2 addresses here. We remove the second address, we only need one. Now we have this. Let's go to our general parameters. We don't need this, we don't need this. Well, let's see, our general parameters, our listener name is bold. And let's go back to, yeah, see one more time to be sure. We have bold for our listener name. This looks okay. So let's come here, file. We save this. And we can close this. Now, let's use NETCA to save our sqlnet.ora file. Now we go to the naming method configuration. The naming method configuration, click next. We go with the default, which is the local naming, and the easy connect naming. We click on next. It says naming method configuration complete. We click next and we click finish. You see network service configuration successful. The exit code is 0. On these we can as well use our net manager. Type in our NETMGR. Click on local. Then we go to profile. We have this there which looks okay. Then we'll come to the file. We'll save the network configuration. Okay. Now let's close this. Now let's use our NETCA to configure our Tnsnames.ora file. Now we'll go to the local net service name configuration. Click on next and next. Our service name is going to be the same thing as our global database name. In this case, it's going to be bold.com. Click on next. We use TCP, and our host name for this machine is miabove.com. We use the standard port. We click on next. So we would like to test. Let's test yes. We change the login details when you use the HR. It's giving us the URL 12543. We'll resolve this. Let's go to next. Our net service name. This net service name should be the same thing as your database name. Let's use bold, which is our database name. And we click next. Would you like to configure another set net service name? No. Click next. And we'll click on finish. Now let's use our net manager to check everything we've done so far. Now let's go to our local. Let's go to our service naming. You see we have this in small letter, the board. Let's delete this. Yes, and let's add another one. Next service name, here still the name of our database, which will be in caps. We use the TCP or ICP Internet Protocol. The host name, we use the default port. The service name, port.com. Click on next. If you want to test, let's test. To change your login details, let's use the HR and HR schema. See, we still have the aura 12543 destination host unreachable. We deal with this. So let's close this and let's finish. Now let's check our service name. You see bold in caps. If you click on this, the protocol name, the host name, everything looks okay. Let's go to our list now. We have the board. You see you only have one address and the port and the host name. Everything looks okay. Now let's come to our file and we'll save the network configuration. Then we can close this. Now let's shut down our database to make sure everything is set correctly. So let's shut this down. You know, before you start your database, Oracle recommends we start the listener before we start the database. Another documentation we still there with this. We see our local sqlnet.ora. We use the local naming and the easier connect. We're currently using our NETCA and the NETMGR, so our database could connect with the server dynamically. So our host. Now let's check our listener status. Well, let's say now to start. The database name is board. Already started. Okay, let's check the status. As you can see, we're dynamically connected to our server using the Tnsnames.ora file, and we can stop this and start again. Do a reload of this. We can check the status again. Yeah. So now let's try and use our TNS name to connect to our database. We use our TNS name to connect to our database. So let's log into our database. Now log in. Let's connect to our database using our TNS name. So we connect with the HR user, HR password, a database name which is board, and you see it says connected to TNS ping using our EZ connect. That will be TNS ping our hostname slash our service name. TNS ping hostname, which is the service name is the same thing as global database name. Says okay. You can always connect to the database. SQL plus or we can connect using our service name as well as our host name. Now we use the host name and our service name. You see it says connected. So now let's go back to our host and let's see what our TNS file looks like now. Tnsnames.ora file, what it looks like now. You see you have your host, your protocol, service name. You have the path on top. So let's quit this. VI into a listener.ora file. See our listener name. We have the port 1521, the host, and the protocol, and the name of the database, which is board. Let's VI into a sql.ora file. I'll see we connecting to the TNS name or the EZ connect, and that was what we used the other time. Let's quit this. So we've been able to set up our network configuration file, the tns.ora file, the listener.ora file, and the sqlnet.ora file using the NETCA and the NETMGR. And we're able to log into our database dynamically. So all we can do to check the status of our listener, lsnrctl status of our board database. As you can see, we connected dynamically to our database now. Thank you.